The following vodcast contains opinions from paid professionals. The information provided in this vodcast is general in nature and not advice. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
So we think returns for another autumn season. Great to be joined by you, Ben Way, as we get into what's going to be a seriously good carnival, not only here in Sydney, but in Melbourne as well. How are you?
I'm well. It's been a long few months. I haven't seen you for a little while, and it's good to be back. Good to be talking racing ahead of the autumn, where obviously we've got plenty of the big guns back now, and we've got babies that, well, bubbles burst probably more often than they float away to the high heights, but I'm hoping that we at least have a few stars out of this crop.
Over the last few months, is there something that you've absolutely loved across the board of racing? For me, the rise of Zach Lloyd was outstanding, particularly last weekend with his 5 winners. But I've also loved seeing Ash Morgan make the permanent move to town in Sydney, and he is getting more and more opportunities as a jock. Of course, his headline horse being Private Harry, who won the Sunlight up during the Queensland Carnival. He's something that I've really enjoyed watching from afar over the last few months.
To be honest, the past few months have been a bit of a blur. This is the only shit I have without baby vomit on it. And I've just been trying to sleep where I can. But between that, racing-wise, it was hard not to focus on the international stuff the past little bit. The Saudi Cup was a highlight, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. That was one of the highlights of the year, I think, from a world racing perspective. Locally, always good seeing the next lot of apprentices coming through, as we've done sort of since the new season kicked off, and then the babies are always a highlight for me. Like, if you have a show that's essentially trials and horror watches, 2-year-old season is just the season. It's Christmas for me. So, but as I said, a few have lit up the room and a few have disappointed so far.
Well, the colt that's lit up the room, I guess, over the last 6 weeks or so, particularly with his first up performance, was Wotan. Yes, Wotan. Got the clarification.
Did you?
From Coolmore that it's Wotan.
Which half of Coolmore? Because as I understand it, there was a husband's perspective and a wife's perspective. There was a Wadton and a Wotan.
Yeah. Well, I got it from Tom. So
okay. Tom it is. We'll blame Tom.
Wotan it is.
Wotan.
So he wins first up on a heavy track by an absolute space over company that we're not sure really what he beat on that day, whether they're filled with quality. Then last weekend at Rose Hill Gardens, he draws wide, he's snagged back from the gate, sits 3 wide, the trip runs on stylishly for third, but still is a $3.50 favourite for the slipper. And there's many good judges out there saying, well, he is the standout colt for the season. He's going to take a power of beating in the Golden Slipper in a few weeks' time. $3.50 for the slipper at the moment. Too short or justified quote?
So justified, but I say that if I was framing the market off the weekend just gone with no holds there, I would say there's no way you would put him up as $3.50 favourite. He'd be $4.50. He'd be $5 maybe. But you do have the wealth of information prior. So we talked about it on Tuesday's show with Brad, and I said $3.50 feels poisonous after what we saw on the weekend. So am I diving in? No, but do I understand it? Yes. And the reason I understand it is, from a tab hole perspective, there's only one losing result on the slipper at the moment. That's Wotan. He opened up at $51. He was $3 at one point. So they reopened him 5 after that debut win. And I know that he was against the Magic Man, I think ran second in that. And the Magic Man had form alongside Rivellino, who we thought was quite handy at the time. So $5, the money kept coming through a trial. People went, oh, how good was the trial? Suddenly $3 prior to last start. So they've only wound out half a point. But they were drawn 9 of 9. They did jump moderately. They went back to last, sat deep throughout, launched a run on the point of the turn, and bumped into a good one in Bivark too. Maybe is the story in the market, because $13, should there be that much discrepancy based on what we saw on the weekend? No. There is another element to it, and that is that we've talked about this before, you don't need to put a price up that you think is fair. You need to put a price up that people will take. And they're trying to get punters to take another horse. Well, find me one.
Yeah.
Is anyone saying off the back of that Silver Slipper, Bivark's the horse? I need to jump in $13 as overs. Like, people would take him with the win, but I haven't heard that from anyone. Do you want to jump in with Belle Merci now at $26?
Hell no.
So like, what direction are you going? It's all well and good for us to say it's unfair, but you've got to find a rival, and Maybe we'll find a rival this weekend.
Well, maybe it is Shaggy. So if Wotan and the team around Wotan being Chris Waller, Coolmore and Tom Magnier, and you would think James McDonald to ride in the slipper. That's not locked and loaded, but you would presume that's the way it will go. If he's the top end of town, then this guy is the boy from the bush in Shaggy, who, gosh, seeing Alan Keogh at Randwick a few weeks ago when he won, he absorbed pressure. He was right there on speed. He streeted away to the winning post in just the most devastating style. And his devastating style, that being Alan Keogh as well, crying and cheering and yahooing all around the place. That's the story that I'm keen to follow into the Skyline this weekend. So we've got the Skyline for the Colts and the Geldings, and then the Sweet Embrace for the fillies as our lead-up races to the slipper. I think he can keep winning, this guy, and he's a gelding by Sandbar who stands for $8,000 at Coringal Stud. He's had a couple of wins. I think he had a winner on Tuesday or Wednesday up in Queensland that was really impressive as well. But the way he does it, he just seems to be a very professional but very, very fast 2-year-old as well.
Very professional now. So it's important to point out that he is in fact a gelding, whereas most of them at this point, particularly if they're slipper hopes, are still colts. And it would have been an interesting decision, but Alan just said the name says it all. He just wanted to shag everything. He was that's word for word.
Yeah.
But he was so colty that he was incapable of being a racehorse.
Yeah.
So they gelded him. There was a bit of a story actually that they found him in the counter, the sofa, the shower. He had marks on his shoulder. It doesn't matter. That's a Shaggy.
That's song
that
from
was
the
an It
90s
Wasn't
is
Me
really-
reference. But so now they're in the Skyline. We're $300,000 and $2.20 favourite.
Yeah.
They'll lead and they'll take a hell of a lot of catching. And he said prior to the Randwick win, he put on 8 kilos and was really feeling pretty good about himself despite the loss. And then he's put on another 4 since then.
So he's done well.
So everything's suggesting that he's happy, healthy, he's not reaching the end of his prep. And they pop so quickly, 2-year-olds. But unlike a few of them, he's got a few starts under his belt now and he kind of knows what he needs to do.
He seems resilient as well. So whilst these colts, these geldings and these fillies can go from one start to the next as 2-year-olds, and as you said, bubbles can burst quickly, he seems a resilient type. Like, he's been all over the place. He's gone from Coffs Harbour up to the Sunshine Coast, down to Randwick, from Wyong. It's a lot of travel for a 2-year-old. Keen to see him on the weekend. Adam Hieronymus to take the ride again. Draws an inside gate, just looks awfully hard to beat. $2.20 is skinny. We'll have to face Rivellino. Like the comments from Chris Lees during the week, so he's the Millennium winner. He gets Jason Collett wide gate this week, which is of no help, but it's the opportunity is available to Chris Lees and this guy this year to potentially get a Millennium winner into the slipper, because typically in the past it hasn't been the ultimate form reference because it's a restricted race. This year seems open. It's their time to pounce. So he's got to be the challenger. Comedy for James Cummings. They have a huge amount of belief in him going forward. Skyhook went into last start only off 1 trial as well, so he will take great improvement heading into his second start of his career. Really interesting race, but the battle for me, and I hope we get to see it not only in the next couple of weeks, but on Slipper Day would be the ultimate, is the top end of town versus the battler from the bush.
Yeah, and we have the potential to have just a cult-like following. It might be building already, but if he keeps the run going till Slipper Day, another remarkable part to it very quickly is that the original plan was the Wellington boot.
Yeah.
How quickly do you change you change plans?
Let's go to a Group 2 Skyline.
You rock up to Randwick, you walk in and you go, oh, have I grossly misjudged this horse?
Yeah.
It does take a good horse to win a Wellington boot, but I want to see them on Slipper Day.
So in terms of the crop of 2-year-olds we've got at the moment, and there is still water to go under the bridge. We had the running of the Blue Diamond on the weekend, which was won by a horse at his second start. That Victorian form looks good. It doesn't look great in terms of the 2-year-olds. We've got one standout, we think, 2-year-old in Wotan, and then the amazing story of Shaggy. The crop of 2-year-olds overall, how do you rate it?
Impossible to say at the moment. That's sitting on the fence, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, but it's impossible to say because we're only seeing the 2-year-olds compete against the 2-year-olds. So you can talk about times and sectionals and whatever and how they compare, and the raw data will tell you that maybe they are a touch below par, but until you see them up against varying ages, then how can we establish that it's a bad crop? The other part to it is the 2-year-old season used to be a relatively small window. They now drag it out over 7 months.
Yeah.
So we see some good horses pre-Christmas. We see some awesome horses for the Magic Millions. We see the English Millennium dragging a few. We see the Slipper. And then we have so much money now in 3- and 4-year-old races that the incentive to torture horses at 2-year-old isn't entirely there anymore. So we see a lot more that are waiting for the spring as a 3-year-old and even as a 4-year-old. So I'm not happy to say that yet. Give me a year and a half.
Okay, so the winner for the Skyline will be Shaggy. And then the Sweet Embrace, which is the addition for the fillies. Bella Zane, very impressive in the Lonhro plate. I think you got to stick with the fact that the Waterhouse and Bott team, they will have a 2-year-old that stands up, whether it be North England or whether it be Bella Zane. They rate them as probably their superior 2-year-olds at the moment. Can she continue on her winning one?
Snitzel Miss.
Mahuna's a Snitzel filly. She won on debut in lesser grade, but she's stepping up. Same combination as Manal winning the Sweet Embrace last year. So the Sweet Embrace, I think, is a little more open than the Skyline.
Agreed. I don't know that they're the 2-year-olds are usually the focus, but I don't know that they are this time.
This is the talking point. Yeah. The big guns back in town. Of course, Via Sistina and Chalwolf resumed in the Apollo Stakes. But now, as we get to the Verry Elleegant, over the mile, Group 1 status, prize money up for grabs, big crowd at Randwick on Saturday, we get to see the big guns back in business. And this is the new match race, the new rivalry that we are going to savour and enjoy, hopefully, for the remainder of this year and going forward as well. Like, it's tantalising stuff.
Yeah, this is the rivalry that we've wanted at Weight for Age in Australia for some time. Yeah, sure, we had to buy Via Sistina to bring her over. But between her and Chaya we've now got a rivalry that we can say, right, here's our headline, time and time and time again. Unfairly, we're probably being a bit unfair on Fangirl.
Absolutely.
Who won last start, and she actually splits them in the market. I think it's Via Sistina around the $1.85 mark, Fangirl in the middle, and then Chaya $5.50. Touch disrespectful to Chaya, I think. He was fantastic, probably 1% worse than Via Sistina. Is that about fair? They both hit the line near equally. She
100%.
was marginally better, but I think she is the better horse, and I think we'll see that on Saturday.
Is there a belief that Chalwolf, yes, his 2 Group 1s have been over the mile, but as he matures, being a gelded son of Tavistock, are we going to see the best of him at 2,000? Whereas with her, I feel like she's maybe more versatile mile to 2,000. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, she might have a bit more sprint in the legs than he has.
I mean, she was a winner first up in the Winx last preparation over the 1,400 metres. Everything went her way that day. She had the perfect storm to be able to achieve that. But I'm wondering if that's been factored into Chalwolf's price.
Yeah, I worry a little bit about her getting on slowly in age as to whether that sprint just dissipates a little bit over the next few preps.
Fangirl on a dry deck is going to be hard to beat again.
Well, the other two have drawn widest. If you wanted to design a barrier draw to complicate things, you got it. So they've drawn widest and second widest. Fangirl will have positional speed on them again. I think she's third tier in terms of rank your best horse. I think it's Via, Chaya, her, and it's a decent gap between second and third, but that doesn't mean she can't win.
The map is fascinating, actually, now that you mention that, because they'll both go back. And you would expect both jocks going to be peeling out at the same time to try and make their run. So you would anticipate that we're talking about a match race, and maybe that's exactly what we get on Saturday, because there'll be horses up in front, like Lindemann, who was absolutely sensational over an unsuitable trip first up in the Apollo, setting that tempo. Hopefully both get clear up running, and we do get a genuine match race in the Verry Elleegant. The other Group 1 in Australia this weekend is the Australian Guineas down in Victoria, over the 1,600 metres for the 3-year-olds, of course. And in my mind, I think there's 4 horses who can win it. Sepples has been unbelievable for Cliff Brown and could be the best horse that he's had since returning from Singapore. I would not discount Royal Insignia after his last start. He hates the wet, so back on a dry deck, I think we're going to get those conditions in Victoria on Saturday. I love the way he sticks his head out and tries to find the line. And Dola, third up. got a little soft spot for that horse. I think he's a real out-and-out winner going forward. And then Angel Capital will wear different colours. And the spruik on this horse over the past year has been big from Clinton McDonald. He's been bought by Yulong for an undisclosed amount of money. I imagine it's a huge amount of money because they have that money to spend. But he was just so impressive first up in the Autumn Stakes, the Group 2 event. Hard to see him getting beaten, and they could have another one on their hands.
The bankroll for Vin is just... I'm jealous. Can we go through what they have? And they haven't necessarily acquired all of them, but let's just go through. So clearly the focus has been on mares, and then we'll try to create our own colts. That feels how it is, although clearly they've bought into Angel Capital hoping that could be a stallion of the future, I'm guessing. But if you can think of a good mare from the last 4 or 5 years, they have her. So there's Melody Bell, Montefilia, Snap Dancer, Tofane, Isotope, In Her Time, Imperatrice, Ice Bath, Graceful Glamour, Fox Play, Forbidden Love, Espiona, On Triviere, Jewess, Chain of Lightning, Away Game, Alcohol Free, and Hungry Heart. What the hell? Then they have Treasure the Moment, could be anything.
Oh my gosh, she's unbelievable. Over 1,400 metres first up last weekend. What are we dealing with here?
What are we dealing with? I think we're dealing, we talk a lot about those other two. Well, Treasure the Moment is a star.
As a 3-year-old, she's taking everything before her. And what price? I'd love to know the price if you can look it up, what she is for the Sydney Oaks in a few weeks' time during the championships, because she looks like very, very hard to beat as she gets. And maybe she... Well, this is the thing I'd love to chat to Matt Laurie about. What is she? Like, what are we dealing with? Did she win that Oaks in Victoria during the spring just off pure raw ability? What's her most suitable trip?
Well, that's the thing again with mares, they can lose that sprint. So for me, weirdly, the more impressive win was the comeback on the weekend.
100%.
Because you still have the sprint.
Yeah.
Even though you went over the trip last time. Yeah. Yeah, she is. So she'll continue to develop. Maybe by 4 or 5 she does lose that a touch, but I hope not. So Komochi makes you very versatile. Komochi, Treasure the Moment, Deny Knowledge via Sistina. From a stallion standpoint...
Plastic Carousel.
Plastic Carousel. Well, I hadn't mentioned that because we haven't talked about the Blamey yet, but I will. Good by you. Stallions-wise, Written Tycoon, Alabama Express, Grunt and Pirata. So Written Tycoon's your headline act.
Yeah.
And then you're hoping to get something just out of the box with the other 3. And to be honest, they probably have done a good job.
Yep.
Then we've got Growing Empire, Straight Charge. Do they get a stallion out of either of them?
I think they do out of Growing Empire. I think in time they get one out of Growing Empire. Straight Charge, yeah. Unlikely. But Growing Empire, I mean, the way you hear Kieran talk about this horse, he was unbelievable in an Everest running third as a 3-year-old. The Coolmore, that day at Flemington, I mean, the sprint race at Flemington, I think you almost can go, I think we can... There's a few forgets in that.
Yeah.
There was umbrellas flying over the top of the track. Like, it was just, I think there's the form on that you can't trust. So I wouldn't be discounting him off his first up performance.
My point, I guess, is that the Empire's there. They've already built it. But they do have one missing thing, and on Saturday we may get closer to the missing piece if Angel Capital wins. Well, then you've got an Australian Guineas under your belt with a colt carrying their colours, and you've at least got something for the future there. But I love the approach. I love the approach of building through the girls.
He is a very smart man, Vin Cox, isn't he? He
think
knows
about
exactly
the colts
what
they'll
he's
have down the line, the things that these throw.
Well, that's the thing. We haven't seen any of the progeny from most of those mares at the sales over the next couple of years, whether it be at an Inglis Easter or a Magic Millions where those headline yearlings go. In the last year or so, we've seen good prices at those sales, but they've been off a little bit, and we haven't had, we've seen the Bookers again and all those mares who have thrown, Sunlights and your Solar Charge. Like, this is the next generation of those, like, blue chip
Yes, it is.
mares.
Yeah.
And, we're going to see some high-priced progeny in the next couple of years.
I quite enjoy their willingness to buy and then keep racing them too, which is nice.
And keeping Komochi, I like, with Gary Portelli and getting that Group 1.
Seamless segue. They also have Plastic Carousel. who, of course, will go around in the blamey Just Folks, my on-top selection. But how did you see it?
Really? So Just Folk for me, he needs the wet track. So I will automatically dismiss him, which is rightly or wrongly. If we don't get an absolute deluge of rain, and he's so consistent when he gets conditions to suit. She doesn't want it too firm, so she wants it just right. She's a bit of a Goldilocks when it comes to conditions, and that's why she was scratched last weekend. Having said that, we got to a very, very firm deck at Caulfield, and they just didn't want to risk her on that first up, which can jar up those mares and set them on a course of difficult times throughout the rest of their preparation. I think she's still got a big race in her. You look at her first up behind Via Sistina last autumn, and she was second to Via. She's got form around the right horses. She may have taken a little bit more time to settle in down in Victoria, but I do think she's got a big race in her. I don't know what it is.
She'd come back to Europe.
Yeah.
It's actually been warmer there than in Sydney
Been beautiful
this summer. Yeah.
The other racing that we've enjoyed over the last week or so, and we have to touch on it, even though it does feel like it's a few days old, is our Aussies, and I use inverted commas because neither Rachel King or James McDonald are actual Australians.
Hang on.
They're both married Australians.
Rachel is.
She's now an Australian, but born in the UK.
Okay.
Their heroics overseas over last weekend was something to savour. Saudi Arabia, Rachel coming second in the Jockeys Challenge over there, and then getting on a plane and then winning a Group 1 in Japan. The first female jockey to ever do that in Japan.
Elite.
It's unreal. And you know what's special about Rachel? I just want to touch on this. Not only is she an elite rider, but she endears herself to the public and to the racing community as well with the way that she's so personable. She's so incredibly friendly. She's such a lovely person. But she wheels and deals in a way that is relaxed.
Yeah. And she's done the groundwork in multiple countries. Like to get that ride she got in the States, to be riding Group 1 caliber horses in Japan and be winning there, to be in Saudi Arabia and to be within a B's, of claiming the jockey medal they had there. Like she's a star. There was a lot of discussion about James, obviously, given he was over there with Romantic Warrior, and Forever Young was unbelievable coming back
Picking
off
himself up the canvas.
Off the canvas. It was one of the best races I've ever seen.
For sure. I agree with you. And to think, you can imagine in James's mind what would have been happening when he went past, and the horse doesn't look like he's out of second gear at this point in time. You go, well, I've got him covered, surely. For him to fight back, and that's the thing. He wasn't stopping. That was his quote post-race. That horse just had the tenacity and the experience on dirt as well. Like, he is a true dirt horse to be able to pick himself up, find the bunny again, and then find the line. Serious stuff. And then to win another Group 1,
Yeah, he did.
18 hours later.
On the bubble. If somebody had have said to me that one of my favourite races of all time would be on dirt, I would have laughed.
Yeah.
Because I just don't get into it.
Yeah.
But I really was taken with that race. Now, you're tied with James. And it's been discussed anyway, so you'll never say whether he went early or not. But I'll ask you a different question. If he had his time again, does he go at the exact same time, the exact same way?
Hearing from him yesterday on radio and explaining the ride, I think he would have done exactly the same. Because as he mentioned, that was the way the track was playing. He didn't want the kickback from the dust bowl along the rail, backing Romantic Warrior's eyes and face, or his face for that matter as well. I think take out the fight back from Forever Young and it's picture perfect, and the horse has done an incredible job. And we can't take anything away from the horse being Romantic Warrior. It was like a very gallant effort, and you could see in the horse's eyes, if you watch him closely, like he has left everything out there. He has given his absolute all. Could you have predicted that horse would have fought back?
No, maybe not. But he was your main rival and you had his back and you sprinted past him. I don't know that he changes it either, and I don't know that it changes the result.
No.
Because Forever Young is just...
It's not like he clicked him up. The horse just took him in.
He's just too good.
Yeah.
But I do wonder whether he would do it differently. We'll never know. That's the beauty of the hypotheticals in racing and the reason why I asked you.
Maybe after a few drinks one day he'll...
Hell no. It'll get more adamant. It'll get absolutely more adamant that was the only thing he ever could have done. Does any other it's obviously recent, and we have recency bias, but is there another race in your life that just, you've got a bit of a family association? Is there a favourite race of all time?
Any of the international ones?
Any.
Oh, last year's Queen Elizabeth. I mean, that's, that's a highlight for many people, being the, Pride of Jenny and the Space. The Cox Plate last year, I mean, the 8-length victory. They're all big wins, aren't they? But a toe-for-toe battle, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one. And as I mentioned, it's partially because that other horse, and he is an elite dirt racing horse, he picked himself up. Like, that's what made that so special. It was, but you know what is weird though? Did you have a look at those? Like, not many people. I feel like they could have had more people there.
I'm happy to go if they need a junket next year. Yeah.
The stands looked a little vacant, and I'd love to see them packed out. So maybe we make
Katie was there screaming her little lungs out.
She was loving it.
She loved it, I reckon. Absolutely loved it. Sick. Not just the race, the entire spectacle. New fashion line that she was able to get involved in as well. Anyway.
So that was what happened last weekend. As we look towards Group 1 racing this Saturday, final thoughts. I mean, the one race that we haven't touched on that I think we should is the Surround, the Group 1 Surround for the fillies. And Lady Shenandoah, she heads the market. She's $1.90 at the moment. Would you expect her to firm on race day? Can anything beat her? I mean, you've got the elite Group 1 company, that is Lady of Camelot. She hasn't won since winning her Golden Slipper last year. She's been there and thereabouts. I know blinkers come off, which is interesting. I think she was a little bit keen up front. Do they still ride her up front, or do they go back to riding her out back? And then Manal as well, who probably hasn't recaptured that Group 1 form of her 2-year-old days, but is Lady Shenandoah just head and shoulders above the rest?
I thought Manal's return was okay.
It was fine.
But I think we've probably seen enough to think that she's a few lengths off the best of them. And the best of them is Lady Shenandoah, so she's $160 now. and Lady of Camelot's $4.20, Lilac $16 or more.
Lilac was awesome.
So you could argue it's a one-horse race according to the traders. It's hard for me to see anything turning the tables.
She's so versatile.
I can't see Lady of Camelot turning the tables.
No, neither can I.
So
I think she's your anchor leg for things on the weekend.
Better than Bank Interest.
More so than Via Sistina.
Lady Shenandoah 160, Via Sistina 185 double. Or you're not happy to take that risk?
Over the last few weekends, absolutely not. I think she's the safer bet though. Yeah, I'm not taking it. $1.60, that's not for me to pile my cash into. But in terms of if I was selecting a best bet of the day, it would have to be her. Because
Does Amelia win?
Everything's in her favour on the weekend. Everything is in her favour. Like, she hasn't won. I know
said
it's like this.
before.
Oh, my God. She draws a gate. She's first up. She gets a dry deck over a trip that suits with the best jockey in the world. Like, there is...
All right.
And she's the class horse in the field.
Lady Shenandoah, Amelia double for the show, I reckon.
Okay.
We both back it.
All right.
We come back next week and
She's
lament
what, $4 or so?
Lament or celebrate.
All right.
No. She's favourite as well.
But
Shorter
favourite?
Yeah. I think it starts with a 2 in front of it.
That is short for her. And blinkers are off. I thought that was interesting too. They're saving the blinkers for when they really need them.
They really need them on Saturday.
Well, that's why I'm like, blinkers back on, please.
Yeah. All right, enjoy.
Thanks for joining us on our first edition of the autumn season of So We Think. Happy punting, and we'll see you next week.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.